Everyone, let's welcome Violet Fermin and Mike Olson to Dragon Talk.
Yay!
Woo!
That studio audience is excited for you guys.
Wow. I didn't realize you guys had such a big studio audience.
We
Listening to the
do.
podcast, I wouldn't guess how many people are there with you in each of your homes.
They
listening
are
to this live.
usually very quiet while we're recording, but they get excited at that introduction.
Tell them thank you.
Yeah. Violet says thank you. Woo! Woo!
So the two of you have long careers working for Adventurers League as well as, various tabletop RPGs out there. But both of you were consultants on an episode of Young Sheldon that had to do with Dungeons and Dragons. And so that's why the two of you are together to here to talk about that experience as well as all the fun stuff that you've been doing for D&D going forward.
It was a good time. Mike and I have actually known each other for years beforehand. So it wasn't it was more, we came together for this, but we've been friends for a while.
So how did it come together? How did you this particular gig show up?
Violet?
Yeah.
And with you.
So the new owner of one of our local game stores reached out to me and a few other people. They knew someone who worked on Young Sheldon, and they were looking for someone who knew D&D. And so they asked if I was interested. And so I said yes, because that's really cool. But then when I sat down to talk with the individual in charge of doing props and all those kind of things, they explained it was D&D in like early 90s. And I was born in the early 90s. So I was like, you know what? I have a friend who is a little older than me.
Just say old.
Who would know probably more on that, specifically on that era of D&D. So I reached out to Mike. Mike, you can pick it up from here.
So I got the call from Violet. And that's when I knew. I thought this was very exciting because I was playing a ton of D&D in 1991. I was in college. We were playing our Lankmar Spelljammer game.
Nice.
And, so they were playing second edition. I was like, yes, I totally remember. That was like a real one of my formative D&D playing experiences. But we were confused at first what they needed for the show. Because Violet, you had said they want us to write an adventure. I was like, or a campaign. Sorry, he said campaign. We're like, what?
Yeah, and I was like, I think you mean an adventure, not a campaign.
And then I was like, adventure? I don't see why. And then, it's just emblematic of our time doing this where there's a lot of confusion. Then we went, oh, I see, because we're making different assumptions about what things mean. Or,
happens all the time.
Happen over and over again. But I thought it was super exciting, and I was way into it. It was a lot of fun to bring. I joke that it was like the thing I've been training for 40 years. Like it was to bring this knowledge that normally no one cares about you using to the fore for really specific things like that die does not belong in 1991, or they could use that book but not that book, or it would be okay if they use that book, stuff like that, like really subjective things. It was pretty funny.
I love that. This seems, first of all, such an LA thing. Like
I know,
this does not happen in my life. Nobody's like, hey, we need you to consult about the Real Housewives on something. It just doesn't. But if anyone is looking for a Real Housewives consultant, I am available. But what else? What did this entail? How long are we talking? Did this project happen? Were you on set? I love that. No, it was just script stuff. And did you actually write an adventure for them? Tell me everything.
So lots of questions.
Yes,
I know. There's so much that went on in a week's time. So much happened in 1 week.
You really wrote an adventure.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. We wrote an adventure. It was about a week or more, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean 9 days.
We did read the script and kind of read it for accuracy and what made sense and what didn't. You should tell them about the props, Mike, and what you sent.
Oh, they rented some of my old AD&D stuff.
They rented it?
Yeah, they needed some stuff. They were like, we just want some stuff on the table for when he's writing this adventure. There should be some things around. So I was like, well, I got a lot of things. I got Dragon magazines and old AD&D modules and stuff, and so they rented some of my stuff. I was so we'll get to what the show actually looked like, but you can't see any of it in the show. But they rented it, and so that's the important part. Yeah, it was. They also rented a map that I had drawn as a teenager on graph paper. It was like 2 pieces of graph paper taped together. And I was like, let's just use this for our map because that's funny. And then I sent them the map too. So in theory, that map was on set. But I got to hand it to this Chris Vail as the prop master for the show. And he was so dedicated to keeping things as authentic and accurate as possible. It was really amazing, like how much he cared about it. And so they nailed it. It was really great.
Yeah.
How much were those rentals for? That's what I want to know.
Greg's taking a tally of all his old
D&D. Kind of an LA thing we wouldn't really talk about.
Only a Seattle person would ask that question.
I feel Seattle news.
You're still getting residuals on that, right? For each time that episode airs, you'll get 1 cent.
Getting the zids, that'd be great.
I mean, again, a very LA thing. Like you could probably like just have a listing of like, I got some vintage D&D stuff ready, whole lot ready to go to rent for your set. Because D&D does pop up in a lot. You should. It's very impressive. So I love that they wanted such attention to detail. What kind of notes did you give them in the script? Like, was there anything that was like, nah, this never would have, they never would say something like this in the 90s?
We should tell them about sorcerer?
The sorcerer, yeah. So there's only, the thing about this episode, there's only a few scenes where they are talking about or playing D&D. It's not like a major feature. It's kind of like a metaphorical thing that lets the characters, grow or whatever, but it's not like the show is about this. It's not like that episode of Freaks and Geeks or Community where they're, or IT Crowd where they're playing D&D. So there really wasn't that much in the script, but there was one bit where Sheldon he has a bunch of pre-gen characters, which were like, okay, that's reasonable. He spent a lot of time to make this adventure for his friends. Let's say he also made characters. That sounds like this guy. I can buy that. But he's going through the different classes there, and one of them was Sorcerer. And said, we didn't have Sorcerer in 1991. That wasn't a thing yet. Not until 3rd edition was there a class called the Sorcerer. Maybe in a Dragon magazine, or, but like, come on, it's not.
Come on.
Not a thing. So they really pushed back on that. They're like, but Sorcerer sounds cool. I'm like, but the name of the class would have been Mage in 2nd edition. And they're like, but
Chris was on our side though. I feel like he was like pushing for it. But like the writing team thought Sorcerer sounded like more mystical and cool, I guess.
It does.
Well, because a character had to react it with like, yeah, Sorcerer, that's what I want to be. And they said, no one's going to say, yeah, Mage, that's what I want to be. It doesn't sound as exciting.
And I think you suggested Wizard, right?
Yeah. So we were like, okay, look, you could be Wizard. There's specialist wizards. You could be a wizard. That's fine. So they went with that was the one thing where we were talking back and forth on Messenger about this while watching the episode. Like, they did it. They actually
because they didn't tell us. Like, Chris did not tell us that they actually acquiesced to that. Like, the conversation left off with they really want Sorcerer. So we were like, okay, well, and then we were watching it live, and then I was like, they changed it.
They listened. That's rare.
Yeah. Well, they obviously don't know our community, though. You would not have been the only person to call out that there weren't sorcerers.
And that's what they said.
Edition.
That's what Chris said. Like, I don't want anyone mad about this if we get something wrong. I want anyone who watched it, who is familiar with it, to like accept that this is all like makes sense and was real and everything. And I really appreciate, because they didn't have to do that. Come on, like they just didn't. But I thought it was very cool that they did. The same with the adventure, talking about writing a campaign. I was confused at first because Violet said we have to write an adventure. Then I talked to Chris and I was like, so what's the deal? And I came away with it thinking, okay, we don't have to write an adventure. We just have to review the script. But he wanted an actual adventure for the actors to have there, like a physical artifact to reference and have a prop to look at, basically, right? He's the props guy. So we had to write an adventure. I made 6 second edition characters. and they had to recopy on notebook paper.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I hand wrote my side because I
Yeah.
was like, I write like a kindergartner anyway. So like, Sheldon's a young kid. It's probably gonna be close to accurate, so they can describe it. And I remember drawing like the maps. Like Mike did the dungeon part, and I did the town part. Because I think I designed like a little outpost, right?
Yeah.
Where they got the hook for the adventure, and then Mike did like the where they go and like secret rooms in the dungeon and all that.
I mean, a 9-year-old genius, this 9-year-old precocious genius, what kind of dungeon is he going to make? It's going to be this huge sprawling thing with a bunch of math puzzles. So that's what it was. And I used that map that I found that I had drawn as a
that's
teenager.
amazing.
Me drawing maps as a teenager is good enough for Sheldon as a 9-year-old. I think that those might line up. But what was funny too about the episode was there's only a few throwaway lines about what the adventure involved, because we see them at the very end of the adventure. We don't see the rest of it.
Yeah.
So there's a few throwaway lines where someone says like, you don't want to kill that goblin. You don't want to steal the key. They're complaining to them about this stuff. And we're like, okay, so why wouldn't someone have killed a goblin? Why wouldn't someone have stolen a key? And why would someone else be mad about it? So we had to work out like a possible story of the adventure from that. And then,
Wait, that came first?
well, that was in the script.
Yeah.
So
we got
that
the script
those
first.
lines of the script
Yeah.
were already written,
Yeah.
and then you wrote an adventure that
Yeah.
was
So
With
we had
wow.
to make something that made sense with that.
Yeah.
So like, why would one character have wanted someone to steal a key, and why wouldn't they have stolen that key? And why would that be a problem? Why would one character want to kill a goblin, the other wouldn't? Why would that be a problem? So out of those two little things we got, and also the scene, there's one scene that's in the fiction of it where they're dressed in costume as their characters and they're doing a thing. So we had those two lines and that one scene to be like, okay, so here's the adventure out of that. And I thought I think it's a good adventure. I've been saying we should finish it. I would love to publish it with As Seen on Young Sheldon. That would be really funny to me.
Yeah.
I know. That's what I like. So you guys spent all this time making this adventure that would be true to the script as well as true to a young kid making this in 1991.
Yeah.
But no one has seen it, right? Like no one, not even
Well,
the
the
actors
actors.
probably didn't even see it, did they?
Chris saw
Presumably
it.
the actor that plays young Sheldon saw it.
I still can't believe though that I think it's cool that you did that, but I also I still think why did you have to write an adventure? Like if the script was already written.
For all practical purposes, we didn't. They could have had, just any kid's math homework and it would look like an adventure,
Yeah.
more close enough.
Because
They
there
really-
weren't close-ups of it or anything. It
There
wasn't like
weren't
you
any
could
close.
see
That's
the
why
words.
I talked to Chris. I'm like, are there going to be close-ups? Are we going to be hearing his inner monologue as he thinks of things? Like what?
I
don't
think they
know why
wanted
you
the
need to see it.
option to have close-ups. Like
Yeah.
Oh, I
if
see.
he
Okay.
came up and they had to zoom in on what he was doing, they didn't want to get called out with
Right.
that's just scribbles.
Or
Well,
just
yeah,
lorem
but even
ipsum,
so,
whatever.
you could have
Yeah.
just written a paragraph.
But he wanted a genuine adventure for the.
I know.
We're all familiar with this,
I
right?
Because
kinda
he
love
tried
that.
to
version
get
of the actors.
remember his daughter wrote it first. Like I think we based it
Yeah.
partly off of some of the ideas his daughter had.
Yeah.
'Cause
Whose
he
daughter?
originally-
Chris's daughter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
His little girl who is into D&D, she drew a very simple thing, and he kind of shared with us some of her ideas, and he was like, I love my daughter, but
Not yet. Maybe she's not quite ready for that consulting credit.
She's not a young Sheldon level precocious genius.
I love my daughter.
He had to say, sorry, honey, not yet.
You got to work for that. No
Yeah,
nepotism.
you gotta have the kind of career that Violet and Mike have had in order to earn that consulting credit.
It's funny to me because in many ways, Violet and I are at opposite ends of the spectrum or our journey or something, because I met her when she was
he was
she
in my
DM'd for
first
me.
D&D game that I ran at
Yeah.
the game store ever.
Yeah.
Ever?
Oh.
Ever.
And I played in that game, and she did a great job. And my character got to fulfill a goal that I thought he'd never got to fulfill in his life in that game. So I was I thought it was so cool. And then I went back. This was at Game Empire in Pasadena, and then I'd go back and play, and I'd see her, and then we got to know each other off of that. But she just started. I started
Wow.
when I was 8 in 1980. So we're completely, she's very young and has her whole life ahead of her. I am an old person. And it's very cool to me that we both got together to to work on this because we were coming from different, like even the adventure that we wrote, the different parts we wrote, she wrote a sensible person's adventure with just like a lot of notes, like, like here's a map and here's some notes about what's here. And I wrote a full on like AD&D formatted adventure with like, keyed rooms and like box text and things that I would have, if I were him, and that at that time, that's how I would have written this adventure. So I think it's funny looking at the two things that we wrote, like how different they are, because she's like a modern, sensible person, and I am stuck in the past.
Is that true? Are you a modern, sensitive person, Violet?
I think
Sensible.
we just had different prep styles, especially like in the eras of D&D that we like grew up in, and like. So I just kind of planned it the way I prepped my own adventures. And I didn't realize other people prepped so differently than me until Mike and I compared notes. And I was like, oh.
Well, I mean, and you mentioned Game Empire in Pasadena, which we have a connection to. I was there filming something for a Chelsea Handler show with Flula Borg, and you were actually there in the room while that was happening, right, Violet?
Yeah, I was there for my Wednesday night game of D&T AL at the time, and some of my friends were Jay Africa, and one of my friend's sons were like in playing. I assume with you at the so we were there at the same time. That was for the last several years my home game store. They've closed and another store has reopened in the same location. But I have a lot of fond memories at Game Empire, both as a player and then a DM and an organizer. It's kind of been like my home base since I moved to LA for D&D.
And that's where you had your first D&D game, right?
My first D&D game, I want to qualify it though. So it was my first game that I ran D&D AL and D&D period, but I ran Pathfinder in college for some friends. I didn't know what I was doing at all. Like I like got a free adventure from Free RPG Day, and I was like, we just watched Community, and I was like, I want to play D&D, and I'll be the DM, and we had a really good time. But like, I know looking back that I like messed up a bunch of the rules, but we had fun. And then I just didn't play RPGs for a long time because I didn't have anyone to play with. And I found Game Empire. I started playing there. And then I was like, oh, well, I want to give back to such a wonderful event. So I'm going to DM. And I was so nervous. I remember I had like my little cards. Do you remember the like little like I had?
You were very organized. I thought you were a vet. You knew what you're doing.
It was my first time running AL, and I had like pictures of the NPCs with tents hanging over my DM screen, and I had like outlined what all the spells did. And for some reason, the first adventure I got to run was one of those ones where it was very free form. It wasn't like dungeon, room 1, 2, and 3. It was like the players can do anything in this section. And I was like,
no, they cannot.
It was very sandboxy in a very constrained sandbox, but it was great. You did a great job, Violet.
So that very first game, Mike was one of your players.
Yeah.
And then Mike, you said your character got to do something that you had never imagined they would be able to do. What was that?
Yeah, this was back in season 3 of Adventurers League, the Princess of the Apocalypse season with okay, so what was that? Elemental?
I think it was Out of the Abyss.
Out of the Abyss, yeah, okay.
Oh, so that's why I had all the NPC cards. I remember I did that for Out of the Abyss too.
And I wanted to I was really taken with the idea of Hillsfar being such a terrible racist place, and I really wanted to make a character that just wanted to get back at Hillsfar, like that they had gotten out and then they were coming back to get their revenge on Tor Nomerthal, the first lord of Hillsfar. So I was like, I know, I'll be a guy who is sworn to kill that person, and I never will, and it'll take me through the whole season. Like, they'll give me motivation to do stuff the whole season because I'll never get to it. And in that adventure she ran, I did it. As a tier 1 character, it came up. I was like, what? Amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, it was very satisfying.
I remember the look in your eyes when I asked you to describe like how you killed him. And I think I was standing up and you were like, fish by dagger. And I was like, oh, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really funny to me. And I mention about that character all the time. Whenever I play that character now, I always bring it up as part of his intro, the thing that he did. But that I never would have guessed that was Violet's first game that she DM'd.
She's a natural.
Yeah, she really is.
And Violet, you were also a DM for the Epic during D&D Live 2019, the last in-person D&D Live.
Oh, I was there.
Yeah, I got to do. It was a really good time. Me and my boyfriend, a lot of my friends locally, we all got to run the Epic. I printed a lot of stuff for that too. I like pictures a lot. I'm a very visually based person, and I kind of try to take the perspective of if I was playing, what would I like the DM to do? And I get very easily unfocused if I am only just listening. So my printer got worked into overdrive that night. I think I printed and laminated things. I was up till like 4 a.m.
Laminating.
Yeah.
That's very organized.
I was a teacher before too, so I had a lot of those things at home.
Oh,
A lot of
Are you a
skills
Virgo?
transfer there, right, Shelley?
yeah.
I'm a Leo, actually.
Oh, okay. I bet maybe you were close to. Maybe you were meant to be a Virgo. That's the laminating's very Virgo-y.
Violet now has a table-sized flat screen that she runs games on with that, like the pictures, the background's animated and stuff. There's sounds that play. It's in this nice wooden frame. It's amazing.
Wow. I've always dreamed of doing something like that. How did you pull that off?
So, okay, so before when I used to print maps, I was using my 8x11 printer, and I had to put together. I ran Amber Temples for some friends. And if you've seen Amber Temple map, it's ridiculously huge. And I remember I spent like 3 hours putting together like 25 pieces of paper for each floor. And it was a lot of work and a lot of cutting. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. So then I bought a 13x19 printer, and that worked for a while. It would maybe take like a little bit of cutting. But at some point I was like, I can't do this cutting and pasting thing anymore, but I still want maps. So I started doing research, and I found someone in Florida who made TV cases that you could take with you. Because I was like, if I'm going to do this, it needs to be able to go with me to conventions.
Oh, wow.
So I bought a 40 or 43 inch 4K TV. I shipped it to the person in Florida. He built a case around it with a metal handle. He like had these like extra things, like extra wood pieces that were like circular wood pieces with like arcane runes, but they're actually also like dice in the middle. And he built it all around it, and then he shipped it to me. And that's what I use to run games at home and in game stores and conventions. It's heavy, but I bought one of those big TV carry cases so that when it doesn't bump into things, hopefully, as I go different places.
You carry this thing around with you to conventions.
Yeah, so like our local convention knows, like if I'm bringing my TV, they know to put me near an outlet and not move my table. So I can just set it up for the day and run whatever games I'm running and then pack it up at the end. I do have to put a qualifier. I usually get my significant other, Jesse, to carry it for me, but I can carry it myself. And I have carried it myself. I just don't prefer to most of the time, but I can.
But Jesse does. Jesse enjoys carrying it. So
yes,
he gets to carry it.
Yeah.
What software do you use for the thing? Do you just display the maps and that's it? Or do you use one of the virtual tabletops out there?
So one of the things that was important to me is for it to be able to be used if I don't have internet. Our local convention is notorious for no Wi-Fi in the basement because we're usually playing in the basement of the hotel, as is fitting for D&D. So I ended up I had a license for Fantasy Grounds, and I didn't quite know how to use it yet for online, but I found out there was like an extension you could use that with like 2 clicks, it will blow up a map to perfectly fit the ratio of your screen. So everything's 1 inch. So I use Fantasy Grounds to blow up the maps. And then I have Sirenscape also in case I want to have sounds at the table, and I just kind of put it through the TV speakers. And at first I just kind of only knew how to like show images, but as I've gotten to know the software, I started like tracking initiative on my screen with it as well. And if I'm feeling very like I don't want to do math today, then I'll also roll the like NPC stat blocks off the software if I'm just like kind of out of it and just trying to like, focus on the other aspects of the game. So
nice.
That's so cool.
Man, there's
So-
Violet,
something.
do you want to mention your Fantasy Grounds AL connection?
I can.
I think Violet should get a ton of recognition. And I
You're
want
very
let her talk
sweet.
all about all her stuff because she does so much. But but you have a Fantasy Grounds AL thing.
Yeah. So I got hired late last summer to be an Adventurers League consultant for Fantasy Grounds. And I had already been using the software for a while before that. And it kind of happened. It was kind of almost like, I still don't really believe how it happened, to be quite honest. It was very out of the blue. I was helping a friend at San Diego Comic-Con. Fantasy Grounds was sponsoring it for the Adventurers League portion. So they gave all the DMs like ultimate licenses and like books to run. And everyone needed training though. And so since I knew how to run Fantasy Grounds, I like did some DM trainings. I ended up preparing a lot of the modules for the DMs so they wouldn't have to prep it themselves. They could just open it and run it in the online in the game, and just kind of like was on call to basically help. But I was just doing it because I don't know. I'm an organizer in the local community, and it's just kind of like you volunteer to do things, you help your friends, all that kind of stuff. But as a result, at the end, after the convention, there was a debrief with Doug, who's the president of the company, and Jen, who was the marketing person at the time. And my friend let me sit in. And at that time, I was like, okay, this is my chance to tell them all the things I think could help improve, like, getting more people to use the software. Because I like the software, but I was like, I want more people to see like what it can do and like things, So I talked to them a lot about it. And afterwards I was done. And I remember Doug doesn't know this part, so I don't know if he's going to hear this and what he's going to think. But after the call was done, I looked at Jesse and I was like, they should just hire me to be a consultant. Like I could give them so many ideas about how to do things. And I said it very off the cuff. But like, I think the next day or the day after, I got an email from Doug saying, do you want to be a consultant for Adventures?
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Way to self-actualize your
What?
right
Yeah,
there.
you manifested that.
Yeah, it's the
That's
secret.
amazing.
Actually, the real thing is that your microphone wasn't turned off, so he's like, you know what, we should
Hot
do
mic.
that. We should. That makes a lot of sense. That's great. I feel the same way about Fantasy Grounds as well as a lot of the other virtual tabletops out there that like people use them but don't know like how best to take advantage of all of the features, myself included. I think of myself as a pretty technically savvy guy, but some of those things are very opaque to me. And so having someone like yourself be able to be like, okay, no, here's the 4 things that you can do to improve your game that night, without having to worry about, the 30 other features that are out there. But like, here's just some good things that you can do as well as how the software can improve to make it easier for folks running Adventures League. You're doing Peller's work.
Thank you. I'm trying. A lot of what I do is organizing like events for FG. I do a lot of DM trainings along with I have a few people who help who are kind of volunteer organizers who help with the FG AL Discord server. So they also do trainings. We try to help support DMs at conventions, provide goodies. We got to partner with Jasper's Game Day and May Days to give them things to like, raffle off and help raise money and funds. So I've been very grateful and appreciative for the opportunities I've had because I've gotten to meet like a lot of amazing people doing amazing things. And I didn't picture that at this point last year. So it's still kind of a little like, whoa, when I think about it.
Yeah. So this is
Whenever
all
a women in
amazing.
gaming thing comes up, like on Twitter or something, I'm always like, they should be talking about Violet. Violet ought to be part of this.
Now they will.
Yeah, I should.
That's right.
I want to go back a little bit to your in-store experience, and I think Mike, you can probably speak to this too. But you, in your Adventurers League role, you were helping Game Empire run their events, 15 plus tables for your AL events, and you were DMing. So you don't know who's going to sit at your table. Sometimes it's going to be a nice guy like Mike. who's gonna like have like this major character fulfillment moment. But I mean, you don't know who's gonna sit at your table, which in every different player styles abound, different experience levels. How do you as a dungeon master manage that? I mean, just not knowing who's coming to sit at your table. You got to learn how to read that room really quickly and make sure that you're kind of appealing to multiple different player types. What's some good tips for how to do that?
Mike, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Almost all of my fifth ed experience has been through the Adventurers League. I got really sucked in at Gen Con in 2014. I made my first character, still play him.
Oh,
And so I'm used to having just a random collection of people every time. I'm not used to having the same group of people that I'm running for all the time. That's like a real novelty to me. I have a group that I was running Adventures in Middle Earth for before the pandemic, and that was great, but that's weird. So I don't know. I try to find, first of all, if there are kids, you got to make the kids the focus. I think that's the first thing. I love running for kids and new people. So if they're kids or new people, you got to like make their characters central to it, so they feel like the story's about them or like they're really important to it. And I think also just try to figure out get a sense of what everyone wants out of it. When you do character intros, I ask them like, what's your flaw, or what's your, try to get something maybe specific to the adventure too. And if someone's a problem, you got to shut that down or get someone to come over and get rid of them. Like, fortunately, I feel like that's maybe never happened to me. Not really. Like, it's never really been a problem. But if I've been at tables where it's been a problem for someone else, and but I wasn't running that game. But yeah, I think I don't know. I'm unable to run like a serious game. Like I just can't. Like, I'm always real jokey, and I don't do voices really, except for the one. I do one accent, and I have to figure out every game who's going to have that accent. But I think.
What's the accent now? You have to
I gotta
drop
hear
that
it.
bomb.
It's like a real kind of country West Virginia accent. But I can do it naturally enough that if you hadn't met me before, I feel like it sounds like my normal voice. But I think that all of that, like just being very light about it too, works really well in the convention setting usually, because everyone gets a sense that like this isn't, I let them know I'm not out to get you. I'll give it inspiration for anything. I just want people to have a good time, and I just want to have a fun game, and like that's it. I have to work against myself when it comes to like, I can be a real stickler for rules. I'm a Libra, by the way, so there you go.
Makes sense.
But like finding ways to say yes. That old say yes or roll the dice thing. But like finding ways to be able to say yes. And I think that makes a big difference too, because the people you're running for oftentimes is someone you've never seen before and you're never going to see again. So that's why it's so important. I think I love running for new people. If it's their first game, that's the best, because I get to be that person who runs their first game for them, who makes sure they come back.
Yeah.
Like make sure that you get hooked. Like I got hooked when I was 8, when some total stranger ran a game for me. Like that's really important. So I think if you just center the players, center the characters, and then if you could center it on a kid too, I think all the grown-ups will rally around the kid idea. Everyone's like, yeah, let's make this 9-year-old the focus of things, whatever it is. And I think that's pretty easy to go along with. It's a lot different running games online, like we've been doing. Like I've been running games for Baldwin Games. There are virtual D&D weekends and D&D Live and Celebration stuff and Gen Con. It's a pretty different environment, and I've had to learn all those tools like Violet did for Fantasy Grounds, but I run on Roll20. But so we're ideological opposites, Violet and me. We're clashing
so alike,
constantly.
yet so different.
Yeah, how does that? I mean, and maybe Violet, you can speak to this too. Like, how does that work in the online setting? Because I've had some experience running conventions and organized play, and that can be exhausting in one way because you're meeting 5 new people every 2 hours, and then having to reset and just make sure you have time for drinking and eating in between those sessions. But virtually, you got to keep that energy up without having all of the the ancillary things that can happen around the table, like standing, like as you were saying, is a great way just to keep the energy up because you're standing, right? But you can't do that necessarily all the time while running virtually. So yeah, how's it been for you?
So I would say it depends on how much prep time I have and how much like what the event is for. I've done a few of the Baldwin game weekends too, and part of that is you're really encouraged to bring like your A game. So I again just kind of take the perspective of what I would like if I was the player at the table that I'm running. So whenever I'm running for Baldwin games, I turn my camera on. That's one of the first things. The players don't have to turn their camera on, but I think just seeing my face and being able to see like the nuances of my expressions as I'm like role playing different things, or just seeing that even if like, you're having a tough combat, like I'm smiling because I really want you to win. Like I'm not picking on you. I think just those subtle facial cues really help.
I deal 700 damage to you.
I'm smiling, but I
I'm
really
smiling,
didn't
so
want
it's okay.
to.
It was just a breath weapon.
So that helps. I bring music if I can. So I usually have like a second instance of Discord, or recently I figured out how to do like a little music bot. So I'll play my Sirenscape or some like sound from other sources to kind of help set the mood. And I think that kind of also helps people just kind of envision where they are. And then other than that, it's employing a lot of the same things I do in person. So going kind of back to how do you juggle with meeting a bunch of new people, one of the things I think is really important is to make sure that people understand that this space is like a safe and comfortable space. And so in Fantasy Grounds and in Roll20, you can kind of set up X cards, and I explain like what these are for. Like, hey, I want to make sure everyone has the opportunity. If you want to take a break, I have this card. If you send it to me during the game, at some point we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break. Like that's a sign without you having to verbally tell me. So I still try to employ the same things that I do in person, and I ask DMs at my events to do as well, just to make sure everyone is comfortable. And I think that helps set the tone of kind of both like the play, but also meta how we should be treating each other. And I guess the other really important thing is making sure every player gets time to shine. And this one's kind of, I think this is really important to me because I've had the experience, especially being a woman at the table, of trying to participate or trying to giving an idea and being dismissed, or kind of thought that like that's not a good idea. And so I often will ask like in turn, like, what are you doing right now? What are you doing right now? And that way I can kind of direct the spotlight, so to speak, and really make sure if someone is maybe a little more shy and a little more withdrawn, we can pull them in. And if someone is maybe taking up more of the energy and not letting others, I can kind of, without saying, hey, can you stop like taking up all the space, I can just ask the other people. So I try to be intentional about making sure that everyone has time. And if people talk over each other, or if someone's trying to tell someone else how to run something, reminding them, hey, you have your own character. This person has their character. They get to play their character. You get to play your character. I get to play the rest of the characters.
Yeah, and Violet used to be a teacher.
I was just
gonna
going to
say,
say,
that's
there's
strong
the
teacher
teacher.
energy.
Yeah.
Yep. Very much so. Yeah.
So, Mike, you mentioned that you started playing when someone played with you on a stranger. What was the setting for that? Because I think it might be pretty interesting.
It was. It's a old saw that I tell all the time. But my family and I were on a cruise to Alaska, and some kids on the ship put an AD&D game on the list of like ship's activities.
Oh.
And so I went, and they gave me a 7th level thief, and I died. That's all I remember of that adventure. But
you were hooked.
Then I was absolutely hooked. And we stopped in Juneau, and we went to this little store, and they were selling miniatures. So I bought 2 painted miniatures I still have. And then went home, and someone, maybe my grandparents, got me the basic set, like the basic D&D set with Keep on the Borderlands in it. And then I played that with my grandparents. I remember that weekend. All of my characters had 20s and things, and they were all Lord of the Rings characters. I massively cheated, and just all of my characters were also like Frodo and Legolas and stuff. So that was a weird way to start, but it worked. So I recommend it. If you can find yourself on a cruise to Alaska, which we went on. Actually, our family went on a cruise to Alaska a couple years ago. I was very excited to go because, like, great, this is what I did when I was a kid, and now I'm here with my kids, and we're gonna not play D&D because no one's running a game of D&D on the ship.
You didn't put it on the ship's activity list? You could have run that game.
No. It was like I guess I could have. I brought some magic cards, but we didn't plan to play that either.
How old are
It was
your
a
kids?
disastrous cruise all around. But anyway, I'll still hang on to the one from my childhood.
You didn't get sick or anything, did you?
That's my biggest fear. I knew you were going to bring it up, Greg.
It's Shelley's. We've talked about going on the Joko cruise, but every time I bring it up to Shelley, she's like, nope.
Why not?
I fear the norovirus.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
so
I'm with Shelley on this one.
Yeah. Is that part of why your cruise was disastrous?
No, it had nothing to do with that. It's just a lot of technical issues, and that was pretty much it. And when you're the good thing was they had like a kids room, like a kids like activity place where you could just drop your kids off and they would stay there kind of all day and do stuff and do activities and play games and watch movies with other kids and whatever, and you didn't feel guilty about it because your kids wanted to do it. So yeah, it was fine. But it was just plagued by a bunch of technical problems and bad weather, and we only technically got to Alaska. We got to Ketchikan, which is like the island of Alaska, and that was it. We couldn't go any further north. I wanted to go to Juneau and go to that store again and find those miniatures.
Are those miniatures now part of the lot that you're willing to rent out to?
No, I didn't rent any miniatures out. If anyone should, though, it should have been Violet because she is an excellent painter. But they would have been period inappropriate. So they did have, though, for the show, they did have a bunch of old, like Ralph Partha and Grenadier miniatures that we had to approve or disapprove as being okay for the show.
Power.
And so that miniature is okay for this character, that one worked for this character. I was just looking at that email actually where we're like, this one works for that one and that one. We also had to, they want to have a map of, speaking of the miniatures, though, they want to have a map at one point with I got to go back, Violet. I can't believe we skipped over this part. So I sent this huge map.
Back to Young Sheldon.
Sorry, now we're back into Young Sheldon. I'm sorry. But I sent this huge map, and they just assumed it would be like a huge game board that would be out on the table at all times. So when I send this big map, I said every one of those squares is an inch. They're like, what? It's huge. No, you would just draw what you needed, and that's it, Anyway, but I had to send them what that would look like with miniatures on draw a map and then put miniatures there and then labeled who the different characters were. And it's just, anyway.
I find that's one of the concepts that people who are not familiar with D&D is the hardest to kind of understand. They're like, it's like a board game, so why is there no board?
Yeah. There's they don't get the start. There's no start. There's no end. How does it end? How do you win?
It's over.
Yeah, it's not.
Sometimes
it's never
not
over.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for 40 years.
Yeah,
Keep going.
Yeah, we talked over each other so much like that where we're just talking past each other like, I don't understand. What's the confusion? Oh, I see.
Right.
You think it's a game board. That's happened so many times.
And then the things like level, like the fact that level means spell or dungeon level or level of your character. That seems like, okay, that makes sense for you to be confused there. But it's never that they're confused about. It's always this, how do you play? Yeah, that type of stuff.
What does it look like? And that was the thing for them. Like, we don't even know what it looks like. So what does it look like when you play this game at all?
So Violet, you paint minis. Shelley and I just did that for the first time with V News from WizKids.
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it.
I really did. Yes, much I would. Full honesty, way more than I thought I would. Way more.
If you're ever in LA and you want to paint, I have a lot of unpainted miniatures that I can give you to paint if you want.
In fact, Violet, you have an unpainted snow speeder, don't you?
I might somewhere. Mike asked me to paint was it Star Wars thing?
Yes, it's a Star Wars, a flying ship, you called it. My Star Wars flying ship.
Yeah, I'm mostly a fantasy person. I don't do sci-fi as much. So I was like, yeah, I'll paint your flying ship for you. And he gave it to me at one convention. And the next convention it was like months later. He's like, did you finish it? I was like, still working on it. And that kind of happened twice. And then we had a pandemic. I do still have it.
It's fine. Violet,
it won't be painted.
I got to hold it in my
day.
hands for a couple minutes, right? Because you were with me when I bought it. I bought it and I immediately handed it to her. So I had my
Aw.
hands on it for a moment, and then I gave it to Violet.
So I've had it longer than he has.
It's okay.
Much longer.
A lot longer, it sounds like.
It will be painted one day.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
fine.
it was very relaxing. I didn't think
Yeah.
how zen it would be. You know, people have said that to me before, and I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to be like that. But all of a sudden, 3 hours went by, and then we ended up having this amazing looking miniature based on V's teachings there. And I was, very much into it. So
Yep. It was super cool. I like, she had us starting off by just doing something that, like, putting a different color paint on like certain spots. And it's like, well, I don't really know why I'm doing this, but I'm sure it'll make sense. And then like you realize that that's part of the contouring or like the shadows. And it just made it so much more realistic. I was very impressed. I thought that mine actually came out not awful.
It's I kind of had the same experience where I thought, I don't know why anyone would want to do this. Like that was, and like one of my friends painted a lot of miniatures for me previously, and I was like, I just don't see how painting something so small can be fun. Like that sounds frustrating. And at some point I was like, I gotta see what everyone, like why everyone seems to like this thing, or at least some of my friends. So I split like a Reaper's Learn to Paint kit with my friend, and I was like, let's just do this together. And we like started watching some miniature painting videos, and we like broke open the kit and like each chose like a miniature and like shared the booklet back and forth. And same thing, many hours went by and I was like, this looks pretty good. And that was fun. And the thing with me is when I get a hobby that I like, I don't know how to do gradual. I just go from 0 to 60. So like I backed a lot of Kickstarters for more miniatures to paint and bought like, I think I have like 4 different sets of paints as far as from different companies. And I got like the nicest brushes that I could. And I have like a whole, like, I really enjoy it. And it is really good, especially I'm someone who, I'm currently learning how to like manage my anxiety more, and miniature painting is just very healthy way to do that for me.
I could see that.
Kind of turn off my thoughts for a bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
that makes a lot of sense. And it had that same experience with me. So I'm hoping more people jump into it, you know, like I think like it's almost like the D&D hobby in a microcosm, right? Because there's people who are like, like you said, like I don't understand how that would be fun. And I've heard people say that about Dungeons and Dragons too. And then you're like, oh, but then you experience it and it is probably not what you think. And then until you have it. And I love that miniature painting is something that, you know, all of us, it's a similar thing. We're like, I don't know, I'm all in. And I think we're all in on D&D. So love it. So great to talk to both of you. I love both of your stories, Mike, as you said, like the different ends of like, you know, coming in 1980 on a cruise ship in Alaska to Violet playing in Pasadena at Game Empire. And then I just love that we have this shared common language to talk about the hobby that we love. And here's to more and more conventions opening up so that we can start to see each other in person once again.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll know that when we're in the same space next time.
I know.
That's exactly.
How many other places have you been in together? You were meant to meet. Hopefully more consulting gigs come your way as well. Because
you know,
I'd love to see D&D portrayed on, you know, everywhere.
I think we wrote like a little guide for Chris for young Sheldon. I think we did such a good job that he will never hire us again because that guide is like everything he needs.
Well, he
now.
might need to rent your props again.
Yeah, maybe. It could be that. I mean, they'll get to, I don't know how long the show's going to run, but look at the 3rd edition eventually, right?
I was just thinking that he's going to have to eventually get to a new edition.
And you're like, wait until all of my books can come out for that.
You're going to blow their minds when you're like, everything that I told you about D&D is now wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, my
You
3rd
have to
edition books
change
are right
everything.
here, so we're ready to go.
Oh no, Greg's going to be your competition
Yeah,
now.
we'll send them your way, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll get those sweet zids.
There you go. Now you're talking the lingo.
That's so LA. I love it. That's how Seattle people imitate LA people.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you, both of you, for coming on and talking through all this fun stuff. I love that you did that work for young Sheldon. I love all the work you're doing in the organized play space. And so are both of you doing virtual play weekends? Can someone, if they sign up for those, will they potentially get you guys as
Can
DMs?
they request your table?
Yeah, I guess they can look for our names. I do it like I try to alternate months so that every month I'm not telling my wife and kids I'm going to be gone all day it would be easier if I were gone at a convention because at least I'm out of the house. But when I lock myself away in this room for, 8 hours, it feels weirder.
Same.
So yeah, every other month I do it. You can look for my name, I guess. How have you been running them lately, Violet?
So I haven't been running at virtual weekends as often. I'm still a DM on the Discord server. But since I've just kind of been working more on supporting DMs there, I put together a little resource packet for the FGDMs and things like trying to have a character creation server for different conventions and events. So I mostly do support if I can, but if I have a free weekend, I probably will run something. I run in a lot of other spaces, so probably you might find me I'm going to be adminning at Strategicon's online D&DAL section, for example. I'm going to be doing the mixing for the Epic Twitch presentation. So
super cool.
Yeah, normally you'd be able to find us both at Strategicon if we were meeting in person, but
that's usually where we rendezvous.
Soon. So yeah, if people want to get in touch with what you're doing on an online space, feel free to throw any of your socials or anything out there. Mike, we'll start with you if people want to see what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Devlin1, DEVLAN1. If you like role-playing games or leftist politics, you'll really enjoy my Twitter feed, I promise. I'm not really on much else in the way of social media. I guess Discord's social media, but I don't know. It feels weird as social media. But I'm on Discord too. I guess you could look for me. I don't know how to find me or tell you who I am on Discord.
Twitter is fine.
Start with Twitter.
I guess. Yeah.
No worries. What about you, Violet?
So I'm a young person who doesn't tweet very much, but I do have a Twitter. I made it when I was studying for the MCAT and needed updates from the AAMC. And now I'm starting to try and use it more. So my Twitter is Viviola, Viviolay. I guess you could find me on Facebook. I'm pretty sure that my Facebook URL is the same one. And I don't know if you are, if you're interested in getting convention support from Fantasy Grounds, you can also reach out to me at Violet, VIOLET.fer, FER, @smiteworks.com. That's my work email. Or if you just want to reach out for, I don't know, that's my work email.
Just say hi.
Just to say hi, or maybe, some tips and tricks that you could provide to them. That'd be great. Perfect.
Very
well,
cool.
Again, thank you so much, both of you. And Shelley, did you have anything else you wanted to?
I love you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving her that opportunity, Grace.
I
appreciate that you both are just wanting to pay D&D forward. You both have good, positive experiences, and you just want to see other people have that too. That's
absolutely
very kind and generous of you.
Including fictional characters like young Sheldon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's
our
been
pleasure.